Have you ever felt like the English language is some kind of complex secret code? Well, you're not wrong. But the good news is, every code has a key, and today we're going to crack it. We're going to uncover the fundamental building blocks of English, turning you from just a reader into a master decoder. So, let's dive right in.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the big picture, the blueprint for pretty much every great story ever told. Then we'll zoom way in to the machinery of time that makes sentences tick. After that, we'll explore some tricky words with secret double lives. And finally, I'm going to give you the ultimate tool to become a word detective.
All right, first up, the blueprint of a story. I want you to think about your favorite movie or a book you just couldn't put down. None of that happens by chance. They are all built on this powerful, universal structure that, I promise, once you see it, you'll start seeing it absolutely everywhere.
So, what is this secret formula? What makes a story so good that it just sticks with you? What keeps you turning the page or glued to the screen? Well, it almost always comes down to a surprisingly simple, elegant map.
And here it is. This is the plot diagram. You can think of it as a universal map for storytelling. It lays out a story's journey with a clear beginning, a rising challenge, a super dramatic peak, and then a really satisfying end. To see exactly how it works, let's follow a little story called The Case of the Missing Water.
Every story has to start somewhere, right? That's the beginning, down at the bottom of the hill. This is where we figure out what's going on. We meet our heroes Ranj and Sapna, we learn their setting, a little village on a hill, and we find out the main problem. The village has completely run out of water. The stage is officially set.
Next up, we start climbing the hill. This is the rising action, where that first problem gets a whole lot worse. See, it's not just that they're low on water. The water in the tank beds is actually disappearing. People start to leave the village, the stakes get way higher, and you can just feel that tension building up.
And all that rising tension leads to this one single moment, the climax. This is the peak, the top of the mountain, the make or break point of the whole story. For Ranj and Sapna, it's that moment when they check every single tank and finally, they find one that's full. It's that huge burst of hope in discovery.
So, after that big peak, we start heading down the other side with the falling action. The main tension is gone, and now we're just tying up all the loose ends. Our heroes spot a man stealing the very water they just found, and they manage to stop him. The mystery is starting to unravel.
And finally, we land safely at the bottom with the resolution. The conflict is totally solved. In our story, it starts to rain, the village gets its water back, and the mystery of the water thief is solved for good. A completely satisfying ending. See? Simple, right? Every great story has a map just like this one.
Okay, so we've looked at the big structure of a story. Now let's zoom in on the little things that build it, the sentences. We're moving on to the machinery of time, also known as tenses. These are basically the gears that control when an action is happening.
You can see here the three main time zones of language: past, present, and future. Just think of tenses as the engine that drives our sentences. They can move the story backward, forward, or keep it right here in the present moment. Each one gives us a totally different perspective on what's happening.
Now, the real power of tenses is in these tiny changes that create big differences in meaning. For instance, take past simple versus past perfect. If you say, I walked, that's simple. It happened, it's done. But if you say, I had walked, that adds another layer. It tells us that this action happened before something else in the past, like I had walked 5 miles before I realized I forgot my keys. It's all about the sequence of events.
We've gone from the story to the sentence, and now we're zooming in even closer to individual words. And specifically, we're talking about words that lead these tricky double lives: homophones and homonyms. This is where English gets really fun and, yeah, a little confusing.
So, let's start with a classic example. On the left, we've got a flower you'd put in your garden, and on the right, you've got flour for baking bread. Go ahead and say them out loud. They sound exactly the same, don't they? But they are completely different things. That, my friends, is a homophone.
So here's the key thing to remember. A homophone is when two or more words have the exact same sound, but, and this is crucial, they have different meanings and different spellings. You know, like see the ocean and see with your eyes, or 8 and 8.
Okay, now let's check out a different kind of word twin. A bird can fly through the sky, right? But you can also swat a pesky fly in your kitchen. This time, the word is spelled and pronounced exactly the same. This is a homonym. A homonym, then, is a word that shares the same spelling and often the same sound, but has a totally different meaning. Like you can wear a ring on your finger and a phone can ring. Same word, completely different jobs.
So how in the world do you keep them straight? Honestly, it all comes down to the spelling. Homophones always have different spellings. Homonyms can have the same spelling. That's it. That's the main difference you need to know.
All right, for our final section, we're going to put everything together. We've looked at stories, sentences, and words. Now, I'm going to give you the master key, a method for becoming a word detective, so you can figure out any new word you come across without even grabbing a dictionary.
This 5-step guide is basically your detective's handbook. You start by looking for clues hidden in the sentence, use those clues to predict what the word might mean. Then you reread the sentence with your prediction to see if it works. Let's check out how to spot some of those clues.
Okay, one of the best clue types out there is an example. In this sentence, maybe you don't know what generous means. But look, the very next part gives you a perfect example of generous behavior. He is always willing to help people when they need it. So generous has to mean something like kind and helpful. The clue was right there in plain sight.
Another super powerful clue is an antonym, which is just a fancy word for an opposite. Here we see the word dissuaded. We might not know it, but we probably know encouraged, and the sentence sets them up as total opposites. If Radhika encouraged him, but everyone else dissuaded him, then dissuaded must mean the opposite, to talk someone out of doing something.
And finally, we've got inference. This just means using your own background knowledge to figure things out. We see the word exhausted. The context is after a morning run. Now, what do we all know about running? It makes you tired. So we can infer that exhausted doesn't just mean tired, it probably means really, really tired.
And there you have it. We've gone from the grand blueprint of a story down to the tiny gears of time and the secret lives of words, all the way to becoming a full-fledged word detective. You now have the keys to unlock the code of the English language. So, the only question left is, what story will you understand or maybe even tell next?